Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call a public hearing of the Stratford Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission to order. And tonight's hearing is on application 2016-12, construction of a self-storage facility and associated infrastructure altering 32,843 square feet of upland review area of Ferry Creek. Proposal includes mitigation via restoration of on-site wetlands and upland review area. Site address 771 815 Barnum Avenue Cutoff. Assessors map 50.10 block 5 lot 5 and map 40.10 block 13 lot 8. The applicant is Bildner Capital Corp. Is the applicant or the representatives present?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office at 147 Broad Street in Milford, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicants. This is obviously an application to conduct regulated activities at the subject properties. As I think you know, the property is currently in a quite horrific condition. This is a public hearing, of course, after the board determined last month that we proposed a significant activity. So even though I think you heard the entirety of the application last month, we're going to do it again because we're creating a new record, so we apologize for the redundancy, but it's something that we're required to do. First, a bit of housekeeping. We have the copies of the certificates of mailing and certified mail receipts. We did it both. There's a little inconsistency between the statutes and the regulations, so all of our butters, in fact, got 2 notices instead of 1, so I'll hand that up. I'll try not to break the microphone.
Thank you.
Is that mic on? Yes, it's very much on. Sorry. You'll recall last month that Attorney Knott addressed you on behalf of his client, Dr. Piper. Attorney Knott was kind enough to help facilitate a meeting between my client, myself, and Dr. Piper last Friday, and Barry was also kind enough to also work through his vacation to helping to facilitate that communication. I know Attorney Knott and his client are both here tonight, and then obviously they will be speaking for themselves, but we very appreciative of the time that Dr. Piper spent with us. It's very clear that he is a devoted naturalist and has great concern for animals of all kinds, both wildlife and domesticated animals. And so I think at the end of the day, he was appreciative of the wonderful work that my client's proposing in terms of cleaning up the buffer in the wetlands. But again, Attorney Knott and his client can speak for themselves. We also just met with our neighbors on the other side as well, who I think it's fair to characterize that he has no concerns in regard to the wetland issues. And this is the property located right here. We met with Mr. Ream and his wife, and I believe, and again, they can speak for themselves, that they have no specific concerns when it comes to wetlands. And then in regard to the fact that this was deemed to be a significant activity, I'm certainly not asking you to revoke that decision, nor could you revoke that decision, but I just want to hand out a memo that sets forth the 8 different criteria that goes into the determination of whether an activity is significant or not. I think you'll see that in each case, we're doing something positive when you look at each of those 8 criteria. So I would only ask that you, when you're considering the application, that you consider it in light of the actual activities and the standards that are set forth for the determination of whether an activity is significant or not. So with me this evening, in addition to my client, are Jeff Board, who's a professional engineer with BL Companies, and Wayne Violet, who's a landscape engineer or landscape architect with BL Companies. And so I would then invite Jeff to the podium to take you through the existing conditions and the proposed regulated activities, and then Wayne is going to describe the wetland restoration for you.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Board. I'm a professional engineer here in the state of Connecticut. I'm with BL Companies located at 100 Constitution Plaza in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm here today to present an application located at 771 and 815 Barnum Avenue Cutoff. As you can see from the exhibit in front of you, we prepared an aerial exhibit that basically had the wetland buffers shown as well as the property line highlighted in red. And for the purposes of the presentation on all of our exhibits, north is to the right side of page, west is to top of page. This is zoned light industrial, MA. Storage is a permitted use, and we have made extreme efforts in preparing this set of plans 100% compliant with the current zoning regulations set forth. As you can see from the aerial, as Mr. Nuff described, the existing conditions of the site leave something to be desired. Basically, the line in blue here along Long Brook shows you the edge of our wetlands, which our buffers were set off of. As you will see, there is construction equipment, debris, gravel. It's in disarray, and currently there are no stormwater regulations in place. There's no water quality measures in place, and right now everything basically sheet flows untreated all the way from Barm Ave cutoff right into Long Brook. In doing so, for the application now, we're proposing to demolish the buildings that are on site, basically go beyond the limits of what's required from our standpoint, and actually clean up the buffer, as Wayne will get into a little bit later. The application is proposing 99,648 square foot, 3-story self-storage facility, which has a 26,109 square foot footprint. There's 20 parking spaces required. We're providing 20. I'll introduce the site plan, which this is very similar to what you guys saw the last time we presented. We did take some of the comments into consideration, and the one change you will notice on the right-hand side of the site, we actually got rid of some of the parking that was down in this vicinity, and we incurred those parking spaces basically on the front side of the building, and it kind of just ate into the first floor. So we were able to free that up from grass. So there's been even more of a reduction in impervious from the last time we were here. So like I said, we're 100% compliant. There are no direct impacts to the wetlands. And in fact, there are no impacts required within the 50-foot buffer all the way to the wetlands. And under current conditions, it goes right up to the edge. So we are going to propose to restore that area, but we do not need to go in there from a grading and drainage standpoint. We were able to design everything to be fully compliant outside of the 50, basically giving back the wetland buffer that's not there today. From a grading and drainage standpoint, I can tell you that it's a significant improvement over what's there. We are fully compliant with the 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. We have provided a detention system in the rear of the site that will basically capture, detain, and reduce peak flows for the 2, the 10, the 25, and the 100-year storm events. As part of our stormwater management report, we had also put together an operations and maintenance manual that will stay with the landowner on maintaining these facilities, the detention system, the catch basins. It includes street sweeping, and basically what that does is it gets us our water quality. We're also proposing on top of that, in the deep sumps, we're proposing a water quality structure as well prior to entering the detention system to remove TSS up to 80%. And then also from a soil erosion standpoint, at the bottom of the bank, we will have silt fence. We'll have double row of silt fence on the bottom. We'll have inlet silt sacks at all the catch basins throughout the site, and it will be completely in compliance with the 2002 Connecticut soil erosion guidelines. With that, I would like to turn it over to Wayne to kind of touch base on the landscaping and the wetland buffer enhancements that we're going to be making. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. Wayne Violet, BL Companies, landscape architect. I'm going to walk you through 3 goals, what we're intending to do with our restoration, with our landscaping along the Long Brook buffer area. 3 goals: restore. Jeff and John had both mentioned the existing conditions along the buffer area, along the site containing debris. It also includes a lot of invasive plant material in that area. So first goal is restore. Second goal, long-term success. Not only do we want to restore, but we want to have long-term success for that buffer in the planting that we're doing. And then 3, enhancing a buffer that's minimal or non-existent in some areas along the western side of our site along Long Brook. So how we're doing that? Again, mentioning removal of the debris, but also focusing on the invasive plant material that's growing in that area that's choking out any native plant material that we have. The way that's done and the way our plans call out for that is an identification of all invasive plant species located within that area. We will be doing removal of the invasive species between our limit of grading and Long Brook, so a nice clean swath around the left-hand side or the west-hand side of the property, so a removal of invasive material. In order for invasive material, and you probably know this, but allow me to share it as well, in order for the invasive plant material to be controlled, it's not just a remove and walk away, it's a remove, it's a monitor, and it's a replanting of good native material that is within 3 or 4 different zones of planting. So I'm going to walk you through the zones and how we're going about the planting and the landscaping of that buffer. So on our plans, we've defined 2 zones, Zone A and Zone B. Zone A is the area adjacent to our development, adjacent to our parking areas, our proposed parking areas, and not currently under an existing canopy. The treatment of that area is going to be different than the area that we're going to be treating underneath some existing native good landscaped areas. So Zone A, we are going to be proposing, again, the removal of the invasive species in that area in Zone A, which is about 9,000 square feet, almost a quarter of an acre. We are proposing planting 50 new trees, native trees. The species are listed on the plan, but I'll mention a few here. We have eastern red cedar, eastern white pine, black gum or Nyssa, if you know it that way, red oak, some material that we think is going to do really well in that area in kind of that hardy, kind of native condition. So again, Zone A, about 9,000 square feet, we're planting 50 new trees. In addition to that, we are planting 150 new shrubs as part of the restoration within that Zone A, which again is just adjacent to our proposed development. As I'd mentioned, it's removal of invasive, it's planting of new species, and I had mentioned multiple zones, meaning we need a tree canopy, we need the shrub zone, and we also need that ground cover layer. So in addition to the trees and the shrubs, we are planting a conservation seed mix, which is essentially native grasses and native perennials that's going to control the ground plane. Invasives are a real pest. They're really nasty to get out. Those are going to be removed. The only way for them to not come back in the specific area is to plant with good native species and not just a seed mix. That's why we have multiple layers of trees, shrubs, and the grasses to control. Now, we can do the best job that we possibly can if we aren't keeping an eye on it during construction. And then typically within that 1 year after installation, there's, and our plans call out for this, a monitoring period of the invasive potential new growth. If there's invasive potential new growth, our plans call out for clearing that out and removing that. With the planting of the new species as we have in that Zone A, that's going to help limit any potential new growth of the invasive species found in that area. Now the second zone, Zone B, is an area that we define currently under the existing tree canopy. Now, that area has to be planted a bit different because if you can imagine an existing tree canopy, the light conditions are going to be different, the soil conditions are going to be different, all those types of things. So we are proposing some supplemental understory plantings in that Zone B. Zone B is between Zone A and Long Brook itself, where we have, you'll see on this rendering here, the darkened green area. That's the existing tree canopy. Within that area, we are proposing 120 native shrubs. Comprised of, again on the plans, comprised of serviceberry, witch hazel, winterberry, and spicebush, amongst a couple others. We have 6 species, all of which are going to do well in that kind of filtered shade or shade-dominant area. For Zone A, I didn't mention this before, but another big piece for good plant growth is good planting soil. We are proposing that area be installed with at least 4 inches of new topsoil. Be brought in as a planting medium for that area so you get good plant growth within that Zone A. So that's a quick run through of restoration, replanting, with the goals again being restore long-term success and enhancing the buffer, replacing an area that's dominated by debris and invasives with really good native plant material. Thank you.
I did just want to add one thing. I know I got it on the record at last meeting, but being as this is a public meeting, I do have to get it out. I mentioned the grading. I mentioned the detention and stormwater. The one thing I mentioned last time was also the compensatory storage. So there is a flood area here, and basically what we're required to do in any development is basically provide more storage than what is currently there today. And we were able to do that in these two areas. Hold on one second. Yeah, basically in this area right here and in this area down here. And basically by creating those depressions, we were in fact able to provide more volume than what is currently on site today. Thank you.
So that's all we have, Mr. Chairman. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, do you have any type of, I looked through here and I'd just like you to go over your deconstruction phase of removing the existing buildings, how you're going to protect the wetlands from runoff, what hazardous materials might be contained in the building, how you're going to remove those materials. Is there a phase one, phase two in plan for a site manager so that staff can be made aware of how the progress is of deconstruction? You have the construction pretty well set, but I think the deconstruction is just as important as the construction of a building.
Basically, what I went over last time, I know from a permitting standpoint, we do have a sequence of construction listed on our EC2 sheet that goes through the basics. In this site in particular, that will be very tricky. Everything will be installed, and basically the erosion control guidelines, everything has to be set in place before you even go on site. So the silt fence, the double row of silt fence, all the hay bales, the silt sacks will all be in place. To this point, I do not know, and Mark may know. Phase one, phase two, there's been nothing to date found, and certainly if something was, they'd have to stop construction and,
All right, so you'll submit a detailed plan to staff so she could follow your progress of deconstruction.
And essentially the next process after we go through permitting and we go through planning and zoning, we basically prepare a construction level set of documents, at which point we typically get into the phase management, the phasing. We add additional details with regards to the construction, and those will ultimately get submitted to the town as Mylars, and they'll be signed and sealed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
No particular order.
Okay.
Excuse me. You showed ledge on the property, on the eastern side of the property.
Correct.
Is that going to be removed?
Yes, it will.
How is that going to be removed?
Basically, it's a controlled blasting effort, and what happens is during that construction process, we prepare, as part of CDs, a set of construction specifications, and one of those specifications is a pre-blast survey, which has a whole list of things that you have to go through as far as documenting before doing any kind of controlled blasting on site. And it's not a lot of ledge in that vicinity, but it's a protocol we would go through if there were any case of blasting whatsoever.
Is that going to be, the spoil of that going to be wasted on the site, or is it going to be hauled off-site?
I believe it will be hauled off-site because we don't have any room to put it. We're basically staying out of that 50-foot.
Okay. One of the concerns we always have with this particular type of schist rock that we have in Stratford, it tends to become acid rock, and freshly fractured has a problem.
Yep.
So I would suggest that one of the conditions is that it not be part of the fill, if possible.
Okay.
You use the term tide flex gate for your tide control on your system. I'm sorry if I missed it. Is there a spec on that, or
There will be, and that will be on the CDs, but essentially it's like a neoprene sleeve that goes on the end of the outlet that basically wraps up on its side. Yeah, it's like a duck bill, and it'll allow water out, but it won't allow it back up, which is where, in the case of flooding, that's where the compensatory storage would come into play. And that's simply just so that water coming back up into the system would back right up
I'm
into
familiar with the ductile, but I'm also, how about ice?
That's it.
Do they function well in frozen conditions?
They do, and they have their own specs, and we'd be happy to provide. We can pull their manufacturer. I know they've been approved, and they're utilized all across the country in conditions in the Northeast even, and they don't have any problems.
Going back to the other thing, and how do we, I mean, it's a very complicated process. It took me forever to read through your material, and I didn't get half of it. But
There's a lot there.
you mentioned that there's going to be a manual. Was that presented?
Operations and maintenance.
Yeah, a maintenance manual
That is part of the package that,
for the owner, or
correct.
has that's not going
That it is part of the stormwater management plan. It's actually, I apologize, I don't know the appendix number, but one of the appendices in the stormwater report that's
It is in
before the town it's there. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And there's instructions and there's actually logs in the back that they're obligated to fill out every so often.
Going along with that, are you going to have a site monitor for this from hypothetically cradle to grave, from demolition to final grading?
A representative of our office is not
Or,
on
or anybody from
Just give us 1 minute.
My client reports, yes, that there will be someone monitoring. You know, obviously, we need to maintain, the most important thing during the construction is maintain the ENS controls, and those will be monitored. I think Jeff said that someone from his office will be doing so as well.
And just a note, it's not uncommon for us to, in our permits, to have one of the conditions be that you have to have an engineering monitor on site after like a storm event of 1 inch or more, just to, send a report back to me saying
understood.
that.
And that's common throughout many jurisdictions.
Yep, and that's pretty much boilerplate for us, so we can include that as a term of the permit.
all due respects to the conservation administrator, she's only one person. And we find it essential, to use that word, to have somebody overseeing the site and send reports to the town of Stratford through the conservation administrator. Particularly, obviously, the demolition, ENS at grading, and all the rest of those things seem to be where it becomes more critical than the actual construction phase. Those we often ask that there is if a storm event occurs, that there is some sort of pre-storm event monitoring of the system to make sure it's in place, then one to look after the storm event to see if there's been any problems.
That's very common. We're happy to do that. And I think
Is that so noted going to be on our permit?
I will certainly make that a term of the permit. And, what was I just going to say? It's pretty much boilerplate. It really is. We've done this for other projects, and I've never had a problem getting those reports from the project engineer. If anything is amiss, I'll certainly come out and inspect. But as long as I get those updates from you, that'll be very helpful.
And we understand there's only one TINA, and we respect that, and I know that that's the case in many towns. But I think you have to, so enforcement is an issue, right? So, but I think you have to look at the credibility of the applicants. And I think the credibility of the applicant in this case is borne out by what he's proposing, by what Wayne just described in terms of reclaiming the wetlands, reclaiming the upland review area, restoring it to its natural state, is what, frankly, every applicant should do. But let's face it, they don't. But I think my client is putting his best foot forward. He's a tremendously earnest person, wants to do a wonderful job here in terms of cleaning up this area. And I think he will also rigidly adhere to all your requirements, including monitoring and making sure that ENS controls are always in place despite the storm events.
It just occurred to
certainly
me what I was going to say, but I think a lot of the concern comes from the fact that this is a site that's known to flood. It's prone
Understood.
to excessive flooding, and that's why we have to make sure we're crossing all the Ts, dotting all the Is.
We are well aware of it. We are well aware of it from an engineering standpoint. We're well aware of it from our neighbors letting us know that. We know that we are going to be increasing the storage capacity, and I don't even think we're taking credit for all the stuff that we're taking out that's now taking up storage capacity. So not only are we restoring the flood capacity that should have been there, but also increasing it beyond that.
Again, to reiterate, we're not trying to impugn your credibility.
No, I understand. No, and I wasn't suggesting
To
otherwise.
use a phrase, stuff happens. And we can't have one person trying to find that. You're not going to be the only project in town, unfortunately. Just to shift gears here, your landscaper used the term long-term success for your project. What does that exactly mean, and how is it done?
Glad you asked. So Wayne Violet, landscape architect. Long-term success we have as a kind of a goal, and the way that we're trying to accomplish that is one, removal of what we don't want there, which, speaking just from plant material, is that invasive, you have bittersweet and multiflora rose, and you name what we have. Removing of those. Long-term success is planting the appropriate native plant material, and we have a nice, diverse mix of species that we think is going to do well in a canopy condition and a kind of open to the air, new graded kind of condition. So we have a mix of species. We have a mix of canopy and plant types between trees, shrubs, and the kind of the native conservation. So long-term success is us removing and replanting with good native material. Short-term success is making sure that takes within that, as the plans dictate, that 1 year after install to make sure things are there. But we wouldn't, a short-term success or walking away would be not replanting with the varied canopies and plant types would be trees and shrubs. That would be not looking at it, but we are planting a good amount within those zones, really ensuring long-term success. Now, it's true in every kind of landscape install that there's going to be some plants that don't make it, whether it's just a micro section of one of the zones type of thing, but we have a diverse species list that we won't have kind of a monoculture of plant material. So we really think putting that label of long-term success is completely appropriate with what we're attempting to do with that buffer area. The project and the install and the monitoring, which will be happening after the install, is defined on the plans. I believe it's 1 year on the plans where we're having that monitoring and replacing of material that don't make it. After that, it's a bit taking back to natural native conditions. So I think that was the term or meaning behind long-term success.
But your number warranty is 1 year?
Yes.
Can I actually
One
comment
year
on-
from...
Can I comment on that one for a second? One thing that I would recommend, if amenable to it, would be a 2-year plan and a 2-year monitoring plan. And along with that, what we normally do in a situation like this where we're having mitigation performed is attach a bond to the project, whereby we would get an estimate from you on the costs to perform the mitigation and a cost for all your sediment and erosion controls associated with the project. And that would be your bonded amount essentially for the project. And then after 1 year, if you have success with the replantings, we can give a partial release of the bond. And then after 2 years, do a full release if everything has been maintained appropriately. I think that's the best way to go about these things to ensure, like you said, your long-term success.
That's fine.
And is that amenable to the group as well?
Yeah, well, normally we don't use years, we use growth seasons. Because if it's,
So,
you want to see it go, if they
so
put
we'll
it in August and,
we'll call it two full growing seasons?
growth seasons, yeah.
Make a note of that.
You also suggested that you're going to put in 2 inches of topsoil. You think that's going to be
I
enough?
think you said 4.
Are you confident with that?
The plans call out for 4 inches. And so if I said 2, the intention was that the plans call out, we're intending to install within the disturbed, open, not canopied area is 4 inches of topsoil. That's pretty standard of a lot of our landscape plans of what we'll install. Where you have a tree or a shrub or that type of specific planting, obviously you have planting medium that goes around the root ball, and we have our details on the plan that show that that topsoil in those areas actually is more than 4 inches. But essentially, like a general blanket over that area is going to be a minimum of 4 inches of topsoil.
Now, all of this, most of your restoration, your planting restoration is going to be on raw soil? It's going to be previously excavated?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, so I'm assuming then the need for herbicides or any other controls is not going to be necessary?
We have on the plans in our typical landscape notes about the use of herbicides and the use of chemical control relating to invasives or future plant growth. So we do have some comments on there relating to that. It's not an absolute necessity for this area that we would need it, but we do have some parameters for the use of herbicides.
Now, are you coming in as are they all these private contractors, separate contractors in terms of E&S and landscaping, or is it all under one general contractor?
And my guess, if I was to try to answer it, I guess to be determined down that, in the construction road, how that would break out. So I think to be determined probably the safest answer.
So in that respect, I think it's going to be necessary that our reports come in from different sources. I don't know how you feel about that.
I'm pretty sure that the monitor would remain the same, even though there may be...
Okay, so I'm not trying to confuse you.
No, understood.
So the landscaper would report to the monitor, which would put in his report to the conservation administrator. Is that the way you foresee it?
Well, I think what the monitor is doing is ensuring the integrity of the E&S controls despite the storms. As to the success of the plantings, I mean, BL is going to be overseeing that success, and obviously, Tina can visit, during those first two growing seasons to ensure that they are growing. And obviously, before you release the bond, she will go there to make sure that indeed, there is at least 2-year success, if not long-term success. So I think the monitor is taking care of the E&S, and then it's going to be BL and Tina working in concert with the bond as security, ensuring the landscape.
Are you comfortable with
I
that?
think that's
I am
standard
comfortable with
practice.
that.
Okay.
That's standard practice.
I have no other question.
I got a question. How much of the brook is on your property?
It actually runs through our property.
But how much? Like from corner to corner?
You mean in terms of linear feet?
Well, no, because how are you going to maintain the brook? Not even the wetlands, because the brook is filthy. Who's going to maintain the brook?
Well, if there's anything in the brook that shouldn't be there, obviously that would be part of our remediation. But and let's say, for instance,
Have you walked a piece?
I have not walked in there.
Okay. I mean, I've been on it many
I mean,
times.
obviously members of our team have.
Okay, you've walked it? No, you walked it?
Well, one thing,
Jeff has.
based on the level of commitment they've shown thus far, I think they're very dedicated to cleaning up the wetland itself. And so I have a feeling that
But
does that
mean the brook?
Should debris come down the brook from an upstream source, let's say, I don't know, trash is coming from Brewster Pond down onto Longbrook on their property, plastic bags, et cetera. I'm sure somebody from their facility will come out and remove
Right.
it.
And I understand that there's more than plastic bags. My concern is, last month we talked about raising this side. Is that still part of the deal? Where you're putting your retention pond or your retention system?
Yeah, we're only picking it up a little bit in just one spot, but basically by providing...
The basic overflow is going to go back into the brook.
Correct. We're maintaining existing drainage patterns, basically.
Okay.
And those two depressions.
And you're going to maintain cleaning the brook?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, when that happens, it's just hand-picking debris along with the removal. And
However you got to do it. I mean, it needs to be cleaned.
And the other positive side of the proposed use. It's not fast food. It's not convenience retail. So none of those things that wetland commissions typically worry about getting into the wetlands or watercourse is going to be part of this application.
It gets there anyway, like Tina said, it comes in from above your property.
Right, understood.
So you're responsible for that, but
Yes.
in your stretch, you're going to maintain cleaning and keep it clean.
Yes. And the good news is nothing will be emanating from our site, but yes, should
I
anything
see.
wind up there,
I see.
it will be maintained.
And the good news is now we have somebody committed to maintaining it, whereas right now,
Well, even by raising it, stops the flooding and go trickle into the brook like it needs to go.
And also, from a trash removal standpoint and just debris coming in off of our site, the one good thing about this application is, for security reasons from a storage standpoint, there is a fence that runs right along the back of the curb line that will help prevent anything from going down the slope and into the wetlands. So it's providing and creating a really nice buffer from that 50-foot line and on.
I'm good.
Anything else? Thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to this petition?
In general, I'm a neighbor.
Yes.
I'm John Ream, 825 Barnum Avenue, next to the property.
Please speak into the mic so she can get your name.
John Ream, 825 Barnum Avenue, cutoff. I'm a poor speaker, so deal with me. I own the property next door. I do have some concerns. I'm not exactly sure what one should be brought amongst this committee here, whether it comes to inland wetlands or whether it should be about the building itself. But I was a good recipient of the 2001 flood that flooded Stratford Center. Me being there, I got the brunt of that flood. It was 4 feet tall in my building. I don't know if any of you guys went there. I can't stop development. I get that. We're good with that. My concern would be, we got a giant rooftop. We have more asphalt. We have less seepage into the ground because it's going to be a bigger building, more asphalt, so on and so forth. I'm not an engineer. I don't know the numbers. I don't know whether these numbers, whether the drainage is all going to work the way it's supposed to or not. But I hear a lot about accountability for maintenance. Maintain the filter from the runoff of the road. If that clogs, is that additional flooding? I don't know. Who's responsible for that aspect of it? Something that didn't get brought up, I don't know if it should be here or not, the sewer line that goes through the property. What happens, what direction does that go? And am I in the wrong place for asking that question? I don't know. I'm certainly concerned that it might create more flooding. You guys talk about, all the debris back there and all that. It's just regular riprap that came off of these landscapers that threw stuff in the ground and so forth. My concern is big flooding, again, continually. And I'm not sure we're going to will rainwater and back up. I mean, we had, back in 2001, I believe it was the pumps in Ferry Creek, right, that backed up. If we have even less drainage in that property, again, I don't know if it is or isn't, but I have expressed my concerns. Will that create more or less infiltration of the water? Will that back up even more? I don't know. But it's my biggest concern.
I'll address one of those concerns, that being the impervious surface cover. The application at hand has no more impervious surface than what's currently there. There's asphalt that's currently there that covers pretty much the entire lot up until we get to the dirt area where all the debris is being stored. The applicant is proposing, I believe it's actually less impervious surface than is currently there. They're giving us back some area by the wetlands buffer, if I'm not mistaken.
A lot more impervious property than there is.
Can the applicant come up?
Sure.
What were the impervious numbers prior to development and after?
I
we have
can
those?
tell you that the rates of runoff are less in the post-development condition than in the pre-development condition.
And that's because we've installed the detention ponds.
Yes.
And
And the underground detention, which is perforated, we're not taking credit for that perforation, but also that as well. So Mr. Reams says, how do I know? Well, you have an engineering report that shows him that the rates of runoff will be less and that the flooding will be less.
And we also have to consider they're giving us back that 50-foot buffer adjacent to the watercourse itself, and they're planting it with shrubs and trees, which are going to serve as infiltrators of any runoff that's not making it into the detention basins itself. So any floodwaters that are not going into the underground storage chamber that they've created, if there's excess water, there's a lot better chance that with their proposal, it's going to be at least absorbed by shrubs and trees rather than what's there now.
Well, there are shrubs and trees there now.
Not to the degree that they're going to be restoring it to.
Perhaps growing through the auto parts that are strewn throughout the site.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Perhaps there are some trees growing through the auto parts that are strewn throughout the site. It is only if the laws of physics are revoked that there will be worse flooding on Mr. Reams' property than currently.
I agree with that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this petition?
Not so much in opposition. I'm Dr. Lewis Piper of Barnum Animal Hospital. I've been there for 31 years. I maintain and do a lot for this town, and I've watched the piece of property behind me, as I've reported to the town many times, be used as a piece of trash. At one point, there were over 225 cars on that piece of property, which I complained loudly and clear to the town. Not until the last proposal, this is the fourth time I've been up here for this, with this kind of thing to build on a floodplain. I don't think you have any idea, my dear, when the wind blings in from the northeast, how fast that floods. Right now it doesn't because they illegally have put berms up against, which I have sent pictures to you and to the zoning board, and they have done not a damn thing. Okay? They're filled with garbage, trash, and material that has been there for the last 20 years. Okay? Before that, when they weren't there, and the river runs right up alongside, John can tell you that I have stood on the back of my property, and I'm on the elevated portion, so I don't have to worry as much. I've seen that area fill 4 to 5 feet deep in a period of 3 to 4 hours, with rain from the streets and the storm coming in. Nobody has ever done anything. The thing that I have seen here has not indicated to me with the taper down into the creek when that river comes roaring up. If you remember, we went through Storage Deluxe. I don't know if any of you were on it, but they were going to propose underground wells, pumps, and systems. My question is, that area is underwater already. Right today, there's 6 to 8 inches of water throughout the property. When you walk on it, it's spongy. The 225 cars that sat on there leaked transmission fluid, oil, gasoline. They were stored illegally, till someone from the town finally realized that the guy couldn't get his zoning permits, so they got rid of him. Funny how they were gone in 48 hours. Was the land or the soil checked? No. Instead, when they couldn't sell the property, they got turned down. Jim Fitzpatrick moved in and wanted to put in a shopping center. He got pissed because I wouldn't give up my property. He wanted to move it. He wanted to change it. I said, no, I'm happy where I am. So then all along comes another builder, and he gave up because he realized that the area, when he saw it sometimes, how it floods. I showed him the property to the next to me who does car repairs. In the wintertime, he has to wade through 3 to 5 feet of water to get to his cars, and sometimes he has to do it. It's not even his property. With the taper down to the edge of the shore here, you're going to see when the rain comes in from the road, and I don't know how you can even think with the amount of land that's out there. And I'm going to tell you, I release a lot of wildlife. I have a state and federal wildlife permit. I release a lot of animals there. When they sometimes can't go, I have to go out there and climb through the cars or the trees to rescue them and bring them back till I feel they're fully rehabilitable, or I have to euthanize them. I've gone out there and found spongy, soft, spongy gland all over. When the water comes through, it spills through. Those cars leaked all sorts of crap into the ground. At the back corner of my property at one point many years ago, John Carroll was down there with the DEP when they did something to go and dig on the property, which was even onto my property, and found a large hole that looked like Raybestos. He was called down, I called him down there, and it was green and blue and red. The DEP came in and they had to clear it all out. There was lead, there was cadmium, there was zinc. If you remember, the original building there was Richard Allen Steel Manufacturing. The basement of that building was so toxic that Lee, the owner next door, was told, cover with 15 to 16 inches of concrete and it'll bury what's in there. People didn't want to rent the spaces down there because it was so toxic. I don't know if that stuff was ever removed or not. My concern is for the toxicity and how fast that property floods. I would hate to see Mr. Bildner build a place and then find that it floods. I'm also concerned about the height of the building in the town of Stratford. 60-some feet is quite high to me in a piece of property next to me. It's not going to look natural. Right now, I can look up the town hall, the trains, the areas. I realize he's going to build. I'm not going to be able to stop him. But my question is, are you really addressing the wetlands? He's telling he's going to use insecticides, and they're going to monitor. I will bet you my life that will not happen, okay? That's how sincere I am. Nobody has monitored that property. I have called the town. I have asked the town. And you can check anywhere in this town. I've done a lot to support it and take care of it. But I don't feel that anyone has ever listened to me. I fought with the owner next door. He didn't fix the windows in the areas on his building. He had the Verizon store in there. They broke in and stole $40,000 worth of phones. Then they stole his air conditioners, electricians. I'm trying to help him while people are throwing trash. I'm having problems with people throwing beer bottles all over the place. And I run an animal hospital where I don't want my poop from my animals on the property, and I don't want glass or material on the debris. The place is an absolute dump. Him trying to improve it, I'm very happy for. But I don't want to see him get stuck in the fact that this is a sincere floodplain. I've been through this 4 times, and it seems every time they're always given permission by the Wetlands Commission. When we go to zoning is when we get into trouble. The last time you guys, the very first time you voted 8-0 to give these people permission, then we went to zoning, and they lost 8-0, and they threw everything out the door. I don't mind the property being improved. It's an eyesore right now. But the thing is, where it is and what it's doing has got to be done in accordance with proper monitoring and regulation. You've asked about the monitoring. You and I both know it's good on paper and it sounds good in the beginning. But I don't know that once it's built and it's going, I mean, they're building these places all over the place. There's 4 new storage places going up in Milford. There's other ones going up in Brantford, Shelton, Bridgeport. And some of them look very attractive. They're beautiful. He's telling me it's low maintenance. I have to tell you, some of the facts that I've been told tonight versus what I talked when I met with him the other day are not the same. I was never told about any storage basins or storage drains. The opening to this property is going to be right next to my property, which I have to be careful of with cars or trucks coming in and out. I still don't know what the opening is going to be like down next to John's property, which is right opposite Burlington Coat Factory. That's a natural right-of-way, which he still has, and he has to have rights to have trucks coming in and out of there. Are cars and trucks going to go in there? They'll still be able to wind and go back. I don't know if there's a curb or not. And when these pumps don't work or freeze up and don't go, or they're not being maintained as a sump pump should be, is it going to be real? If you don't realize when the water runs down, I can tell you, where I am up on my property, the flood in 2001, I took over 300 gallons out of my property. Every time now I still get a hard rain, I get some water in and around my building. The reason being, I'm built on granite. Nobody told me about any blasting. My building sits, mine's the original Santa Oil Company built in 1948. My wing, when they went to put it on, thought they were going to go and just dig land and put it in. I'm built on a solid slab of granite. Blasting, they tried to do, and I said, you're not even going to touch it, you'll blow my building to pieces. And I can't afford to have that. And the question is, where is all the debris from this land going to go? If you dig under the Richard Allen factory and you find there's toxic waste, where is it going? And along the river, if you go down, some of you said you've walked the river, I'll bet you couldn't even tell me right now what's using that they bulldozed up and put in there. Banisters, wood, plastic, metal, trash cans, oil cans to block the water from coming up over the edge. Totally illegal and not in reference with what the Wetlands Commission has ever allowed. I've called and complained numerous times. I've gone down there and asked them not to do that and been threatened. And the question is, what are you going to do to try and maintain this property and the abilities around it? The amount of asphalt that's going to be put on this property compared to what is there now, I don't think you're reading the directions right. It's going to be more. If you include not only asphalt, but the size of the building, it's going to cover up more than what's on the building right now. And that means the water is going to run faster and harder to the creek. If there's insecticides and pesticides, are they going to go into the creek? And where are they going to go from there? Long Island Sound. And right now, Connecticut is considered one of the biggest polluters of Long Island Sound. And I don't want to see that. Those pumps, I can't tell you how many times they don't work. But the question is, even for the people that are my neighbors around me, I don't want to see them flood. I have less to worry about. But the question is, are we going to be ecologically safe and make this a good functional use and not have poor Mr. Buildner end up trying to build a building, as the last three have found out, was probably going to sink in the mud. If you've really been out there, you know that is sponge. And trying to put blacktop and asphalt without anything. Mr. Fitzpatrick, who built the Big Y Shopping Center, was the only one that came up with a plan that I saw potentially would cause that land from not being spongy and sinking. And I can tell you, even recently, I've seen up to a foot of water out there in the last 3 or 4 months. And we had a drought last year, a drought, and very few rainstorms, and there was still water sitting on the land. The bulldozers would come in, throw their wood chips down, and splinter it to try and bury it and cover it because they wanted to make it attractive for sale. And the family that owned it lost it in bankruptcy court because of family problems, which I'm not unhappy about because they were horrible neighbors. You know, I've had a biker club living in the basement that on weekends with the biker club was pot and drugs. The other weekends was the bouncy house with their kids and stuff. They didn't bother me and I didn't bother them. You know, other than that, I had the automotive place, which was okay. You know, I had no complaints with most of my neighbors, and I don't with the factory bedding outlet. But I want to try and maintain there. I mean, if you guys are not going to respect the land and not do as it is, it's going to force me to up and leave the town because I want to see it maintained. I want to see a nice development. I have no problem with that. And I have not objected to anything based upon what has been the shopping center. This is the second storage unit that's been proposed there, and there was another shopping center proposed before that. My question is, are you really going to be able to convince me that you're going to have monitors there and that you're going to watch to see that this property does not get flooded? And also, if not, poor people like John, who are up at the other end of the property right next to the Rumors Bar, he's going to tend the brunt because the river will swipe it up towards him. You get it coming down from Longbrook, coming in from the ocean, and that place is a pond. And I could tell you that there's times when I could put fish and ducks out there, and they'd be fine for 5 to 8 days. That's how deep it gets. So my question is, are we going to maintain this property and maintain it so that it's in an environmentally safe way, allow him to operate a profitable business, and not create problems? I don't like the entrance right up next to my property because I think it's going to create problems with dogs getting out of the car and stuff like that. But that's, you know, the sump pumps are another whole issue. And I think that probably the entrance goes more before the zoning. But I don't feel that compared to what I heard tonight versus what I heard the other day, and the monitoring and the pumps are, to me, as I feel, I'm being told 3 or 4 different stories. And I don't feel that I've gone before this commission 3 or 4 times, even sometimes through Barry. And my question is anyone listening? We keep talking about building on this property, and everyone keeps saying, I know it's a floodplain, it's awful. The only one I heard was Stephanie Phillips at the zoning board. She said, are you crazy? That place floods like a banshee. And it can, in a matter of minutes. And I've been through some very heavy rainstorms. Because of the granite around my property, I had to clean up flooding. And the thing is, my rain is going to run off onto his property. And if he has more asphalt and building, where's it going to go? And you're saying these pumps under the ground are going to seep out slowly like a septic system. How does it do it underwater? I mean, you have to remember, I had a septic system on my property before, till it got destroyed, and then the town said you have to go to the sewer system. And if you could see what they had to do to get it through, they thought they were going to drill right across Barnum Ave and get it done in a day or 2. 14 days to dig the granite up with air hammers, freaking it out and cracking my building. So the question is, no one's told me about blasting. Question is, where is that going to go? And also, what are you going to do to maintain this property's integrity to the environment, as well as maintain that it stays as the building that it should be? I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall every time. And I'm just going like, I don't know why we're not listening to the environment and making sure that it complies. You know, I think it's very important. You've asked some intelligent questions, but at the same time made statements that to me do not. That property is going to get overgrown with weeds. They own the property on the other side of the river, too. It's a 2.5-acre piece of property in that one, besides the old automotive place. And that they're not going to do anything on the other side of the river. If you know anything about weeds and trees and stuff like that, it's going to blow and come across. Some of you brought it up. How are you going to maintain the weeds? Insecticides, herbicides, pesticides? They're going to wash right into the sound. So it's not an easy job. I'm a gardener, and I can tell you, even in a drought, weeds grow. You know, and I think it's wonderful. We're going to try to restore it back to where it should be, because I try to release a lot of wildlife out there to go back into the real world. But I can't put it in a toxic environment. And I can't also see that the way it's being designed, that it's not going to flood again. So I'm not sure, you know, what you're designed to be is based upon what's here. I looked at the tapering slope from the property down into the creek. When that river comes rushing in, I don't see how it's not going to go over. I've gone down to the gun club, and I can tell you on a good nor'easter day, I've seen the water come up over the gun club wall to within 9 feet of that main building. If you don't know it, that is almost 100 feet inland from the wall. And that's seawater coming in. And there is seawater that comes up through that sluice in the heavy storms. That's my main concern and indication at this point.
Which one's your property?
I own Barnum Animal Hospital, which is right here.
Okay.
I'm 755 Barnum Avenue cutoff. It's the old town, almost right across from Burlington Coat Factory, not quite. John's property is the other part right now. We're the two that are sandwiched in between. Any other questions?
Yeah, but he's on the downhill side. He's on the downhill side.
No.
All right.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone else? Would you like rebuttals?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll get to some of the specifics, but I think there's two very important overriding factors. What is the alternative to what my client is proposing? We could leave it as it is. I don't think anyone's going to be happy with that. I think you've been desperate for someone like my client to come along for years to propose exactly what he's proposing. So I understand the doctor's concerns, but when he says, on the one hand, he says, I'm happy about what he's doing, but then expresses all these other sort of concerns, well, you can't have it both ways. Either it's going to get developed and the wetlands are going to be restored, or it's going to remain the way it is. And that's ultimately your decision. I think you're going to make the right decision, which is you're going to take the restoration with the proper precautions. And when it comes to flooding, my client is an experienced developer. He has a first-rate experienced engineering team. He's done a phase 1, he's done a phase 2, he has the stormwater reports. He's not going into this with his eyes closed. He's going into it with his eyes wide open, aware of all the issues, aware of all the concerns, and with the proper team behind him to rectify those things when it comes to flooding or anything else. On some of the issues that Dr. Piper mentioned, height is 40 feet from the street. We comply with those zoning regulations. It's not your business. Access, same thing. That's DOT and zoning. None of your concern. When it comes to his concern regarding a sump, I will concede, because I didn't think it was particularly relevant, there is an underground storage detention chamber in the rear of the site. It's not mechanical. There is no pump. It's not a sump pump. It is an additional bit of storage. If we were to remove that, it would be worse. We're leaving it in because it's better. It's retaining water until when a flood or a higher water condition subsides, and then it gets gradually released. And so we're holding that volume of water until after the flood is gone. If he would like us to remove it, it's not going to make anything better. It'll make things worse. In the application of herbicides, listen, they haven't gone and identified every last invasive species. Wayne, I think, described a number of them. If you like, I can have him describe how it's done. When you find an invasive species, they could cut the branch and they dab some herbicide on that cut portion of the plant. It's not there. We're not going to have a biplane spraying herbicide over from 10,000 feet. It's done very surgically and done in a way, and I'm sure Tina can tell you, this is routinely done as a way of restoring wetlands and not making them worse. And again, I don't know how many times we have to say it, we are reducing the rates and volume of runoff. I know that they're looking at the building and the pavements. We are reducing the rates of runoff. We have a stormwater report that demonstrates that. There's no evidence to the contrary. I mean, we can say it 900 different ways, but it's just not the case that we're going to be increasing flooding. We are increasing the flood storage capacity, and we are reducing the rates of runoff. So we'd be happy to answer any questions, but ultimately your decision is, do you leave it as is, or do you take this really tremendous proposal by my client, who has the best of intentions. He wants to run his business in a environmentally friendly way, getting along with his neighbors, and that's our goal.
Mr. McCann.
I do. I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
Excuse me. You're not going to reduce the volume. You may reduce the rate, but unless you know Mother Nature, you're never going to reduce the volume. I don't think any of us are under any illusion that have ever lived in Stratford for any given time that this property is not going to flood again. Our question, I was going to wait for the administrative session to bring this up, but it may be more appropriate for the years. If you look at Barnum Avenue, if you look at the Longbrook watershed, which I have often looked at in my previous job, I mean, if you go up to Longbrook, Burlington, all the way up, you're basically solid pavement, solid impervious surface. The majority of the water that comes into this site is from north of Barnum Avenue, I'm sorry to say. Although it does receive some water from salt water. In fact, the existence of Westbrook Peak on the western side of this property shows that this historically was a tidal wetland. The contributing factor there, as we've mentioned before and has been brought up a couple times, is the culvert under the railroad. That really does have a significant control in both directions. I don't think your engineer can look me in the eye and tell me that he could guarantee us that we're never going to have water over elevation 9 on that property.
I don't think you ever made that representation.
I know, and I'm not saying you did. I'm just saying we're under no illusion either.
Okay.
This is changing gears ever so slightly, and it came up with Mr. Ream. You do have another access way on the other side of the property
We do.
that comes in.
Yes.
You showed you're not going to use that during construction, are you? Because you showed no construction entrance way.
Listen, we are way off from your jurisdiction. I'm happy to answer the question.
Well, no. The construction pad is under our jurisdiction for the runoff.
And there's going to be E&S controls to control that.
We look at that as well.
This is going to be our main access,
Okay.
both before and after construction.
Main or sole?
What's that?
Main or sole access?
The reason why we maintain the access next to Mr. Ream is because he needs that to get into his building. We would be happy to, if anyone told us to, close that off. Mr. Ream certainly would not be happy.
Well, I'm talking about during construction.
I'm talking about post-construction.
That we have to clean the wheels off of and that kind of thing. No?
Where do we show our tracking?
We do show our tracking pad.
You do show a tracking pad, right?
Yep, we show it at this driveway. and
Right.
that will be what-
I understand that. And that's fine. That's what I'm saying. If we use that, okay. But you're not going to use the other one because without...
And throughout the duration of construction, that's the entrance we can advise contractors to use, and that will be the only one with the anti-tracking pad.
That's all I want to know.
Oh, that's it.
Thank you. This concludes the public hearing. Thank you. I'd like to call the I'd like to call a regular meeting to order
Mr. Chairman,
at,
Mr. Chairman, we have to make a motion to close the public.
oh, motion to close the
We
public
have to make a motion to close the
Motion to
public.
close the public hearing?
I second it.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Closed. I'd like to call order Regular meeting at 8:04. I don't know. Is it done? You guys want to recess, or you want to just keep going?
2-minute recess.
Let's have a 5-minute recess and then come back at 8:10. Yeah. Well, number one. Number one. Every car that's sitting there may as well be.
They're essentially
Right. Every car that's there is asphalt. And then all this dirt here is all packed down and full of oil. The runoff off that is, it's got to be, if you took a rate, it would have to be at best, or at worst, probably 85 to 90% what runs off the solid paved area.
And then we don't have to, I can't remember what I wrote in my memo, but I don't think we have to render a decision on it. Yeah. You know, a buffer?
Where's this drawing? I want to see this drawing.
Yeah, I mean, that's what take the buffer.
See this? That's the property. That's the ones they're taking out. That's the mess right next to the brush.
Yeah. And see, Bill, do you see what I'm saying? Like, this area here, though it's technically obvious, if you've been down there, that is all hardwood.
Good evening again. It's 8:10. I would like to call the regular meeting of the Stratford Inland Wetlands Watercourse Commission to order. First item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of January 18th regular meeting and the February 1st special meeting. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Yep.
And if so, are there any changes, corrections, additions, deletions? We have a motion to approve the minutes.
I'm going to get a motion to approve it.
We have a second. Mr. Slager. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
Aye.
Under old business, we have the application 2016 that we just heard of a self-storage facility.
Mr. Chairman,
We have a motion to take that off.
I'll make a motion to take application 2016-12 off the table.
Have a second?
Second it.
Discussion? Can we amend the agenda and hear the other application before we discuss the storage? We have the other.
We can if it's amenable to everyone here.
What was it?
Switch the order.
To amend the agenda to hear B before A.
Oh, then I'll make a motion to...
I make a motion. That's okay. I make a motion.
We have a second?
Okay.
Okay, so we are going to hear application 2016-15,
Got to take it off the table.
construction of a new Temple Hall, associated infrastructure, upland review area of Freeman Brook Watercourse. Site address 96 Chapel Street, Assessor's map 60.17, block 1, lot 3. Applicant Hindu Cultural Center. Is the applicant or his representative present?
I'll make the motion to take it off the table.
First, we'll take it off.
I second it.
Good evening, Madam Secretary, Ms. Beto, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Barry Knott. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Knott & Dunn with offices at 1656 Main Street, Stratford. As I was last month, I'm here this evening on behalf of the Hindu Cultural Center, which has been in existence in the southern Fairfield County area since 2003, which purchased the property in 2011 from the Unitarian Church on Chapel Street. And my client has been using the existing Unitarian Church for its religious and cultural programs since acquiring the title to the property in 2011, when they actually bought the site. With me here this evening to answer questions, if necessary, are Ms. Renu Vij, who's the president of the Hindu Cultural Center. She is to my left. Her husband, Mr. Jitendra Vij, and Dr. Pramila Nathan, a member of the Hindu Cultural Center Board of Directors, as well as Mr. Artie Liu, a civil engineer from Atlantic Consulting and Engineering, who designed the drainage plan, the soil erosion settlement control plan, with supporting details, who will explain the center's proposal to you from a drainage and hydrology perspective. Before I introduce Mr. Liu, I just want to refresh your recollection about what the purpose of the new facility will be. Hindu temples are not only sacred places, but also places of secular activity, a meeting place where members can gather for lectures, practice yoga, meditation, spiritual discourses, and sing divine songs. The new building proposed by the Hindu Cultural Center will incorporate a sacred temple, the design of which has to follow certain geometrical designs relating to the placement of deities and the gathering of universal cosmic energy. The temple must consist of an inner sanctum where deities are placed, the primary location of which must face east. The new building is being proposed solely for religious purposes, whereas the existing facility, the old Unitarian Church, will be used for all of the cultural activities. Prior to embarking on this current proposal, my client considered reconfiguring the current worship hall, which was the Unitarian Church. But that church, that building was designed on Unitarian religious principles, and exploring various options along those lines didn't work. Unfortunately, the current hall did not lend itself to accommodating all of the geometrical design principles and leave room for Hindu religious practices to take place without undergoing a massive expansion of that facility and interruption of its current operation. Hence, the proposal before you tonight was explored as a solution to this problem, and it was determined that this proposal satisfies the geometrical design requirements for a Hindu religious facility while still leaving the previous Unitarian Church building available to continue all cultural activities. Now, the former building is 9,464 square feet. The new temple is 7,164 square feet on for a total building site of 16,628. The site itself is 3.598 acres. It is a 156,000 square foot site. Parking is proposed for 105 cars, where 84 are required under zoning regulations. In addition to wetlands approval, my client will be seeking special case approval from the Zoning Commission pursuant to the zoning regulations which allow religious facilities as a permitted use subject to special case approval. So we have to go to the Zoning Commission for a public hearing seeking special case approval. The site is located in that portion of Stratford which has a 250-foot wetland setback for regulated activities. All of the activity that we are proposing exists outside of 90 feet from the wetland area. So we're without 90 feet, except for the rain garden, which is inside the 90 feet. Now, at last month's meeting, Tina and Commissioners McCann and Hoydick asked for more specific details on the leadoff and slope from the overflow weir to the watercourse from the rain garden shown on our proposed drainage plan. Commissioner McCann also had questions regarding the details of the gutters and leaders dispersing roof drainage onto the site and how this discharge would be dispersed at ground level. Tina was also concerned about the ambiguity in one of the notes on the site plan relating to the construction of a retaining wall on the property line between our property and the property of Mrs. Evelyn Clow, and requested more information regarding the retaining wall. In a letter to Tina dated January 30th, 2017, our engineer from Atlantic Engineering, Mr. Artie Liu, submitted a revised plan and provided the Commission with answers to all of the questions raised by Bill and Ron and Tina at the last meeting. So at this time, I want to introduce Mr. Artie Liu, the civil engineer from Atlantic, who will explain the revised plan as it relates to the wetland area located on site and the answers to the above referenced questions. Artie?
Good evening, Artie Liu from Atlantic Consulting and Engineering. Now, during last month's meeting, the committee had concerns regarding our design, so we revised them accordingly to address your concerns. One of them was for the steep grade so we revised the overflow and changed it to two 6-inch pipe with grates, and then it's directed downslope towards a level spreader closer to the water course. That way we avoid the scouring of the soil in this area since the slope is very steep. And then the address, one concern was for the cross-section of the existing with the superimposed proposed topography of the rain garden. So we added sheet S4 to show the section of the existing condition with the superimposed rain garden. And then one concern was how the roof is being picked up. We've shown on the plan the pipe that is wrapped around towards the back on both sides of the building. And then the architect has also shown how his inside piping will be connected from his downspout towards the pipe that is outside the building. And then the other concern was for the retaining wall. So the architect has revised the plan and rearranged the parking area so as to move the parking slot that is near the eastern property line, which has a steeper slope. The parking area has been moved westward and thus avoid the construction of a rain garden because the parking has been moved away from the steeper slope, and the existing slope right now will be utilized as the proposed slope for the parking. And then the corresponding drainage summary report has been revised to show and reflect the changes made for the rain garden and the calculations. Thank you.
Thank you for your revisions.
Thank you.
They're very, very helpful. I do have a couple questions. First of all, you show a 6-inch pipe as being the overflow pipe from your rain garden.
Yeah, 2 6-inch pipe.
You feel that's adequate in size?
Yeah. I have the conveyance calculation at the appendix. I added a conveyance calculation.
I will take your word for it. You feel that your calculations show that that's adequate to handle the runoff that's coming to this rain garden in an overflow?
Yes, sir.
Fine. You're going to install the pipe down to the proposed level spreader
Yes, sir.
down the slope. I'm a little concerned about that from two aspects. One, it has to be put in, excavated in raw soil. And the trench has to be dug, obviously significantly below the pipe, and then backfilled. The stabilization of that area kind of gives me concern from two aspects. A, the construction portion of that. And secondly, if perchance your overflow pipe gets clogged or does not function, could there be or would there be overflow down over the top of that berm, down that slope to the water course?
If both overflow pipes gets clogged, then yes, there will be a chance for the water to overflow.
Do you think it would be of any value or long-term to put in some modified riprap in a small section going down that pipe excavation?
Along the root of the pipe?
When you're installing the pipe down the hill, you're going to need some sort of stabilization
Yeah.
in short term. Could that be combined with a long-term stabilization that could be used possibly as an emergency overflow if there ever should happen to be a clog in the pipe?
Yeah, we can add that one,
By
sir.
use of some modified riprap or small riprap?
Yeah, we can do that.
Could that be done?
Yes, sir.
Could that be offered into the application?
Yeah, we can include that one.
Could you note that?
Yep.
To clarify, sir, that will be from the top all the way
Right.
to the level spreader. Okay.
Does not need to be wide.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, on your catch basin, are you familiar with hooded catch basins?
Yes, sir.
If you're not, you can look at their application.
Yeah.
They have a detail of it. You show in your detail, your catch basin detail. Could that be made into a hooded?
Yeah. Yeah, we can make that into hooded catch basin.
Would you offer that?
Yeah.
Could you note that?
Got it. A hooded catch basin.
Other than that, thank you for your modification.
Thank you, sir.
Just a concern in regards to the way the parking lot is situated and the rain garden is at the one end. During a heavy snow event, how are you going to safeguard? It looks like the only area they're going to have to plow the snow is towards the north part of the building, of the parcel. The east side is restricted. The west side has the building. What's going to limit them from stockpiling snow and salt and road debris right in front of that rain garden?
I believe if ever there will be plowing for the snow, it will stop at the edge of the asphalt, which is on this area, existing asphalt. This will remain as grass.
Okay. But, I mean, and everything is sloped towards that rain garden. So could there be some type of a notation or something that, snow not to be stockpiled in that area?
Okay, we can add a note to that one, sir.
That's my concern. Thank you.
I think it might also be prudent for this application, should it be approved, for the rain garden to be issued also with a bond. So you have to maintain the rain garden for at least one growing season to obtain your bond back in full at the end of that growing season, as an assurance that the rain garden is being properly maintained. Does that sound appropriate?
Okay, thank you.
As far as Bill's two STIPs are concerned, Ron's STIP is concerned, we do agree to have those STIPs incorporated into our permit. The bond is, we had anticipated that anyway, so that completes our presentation, and I would ask for favorable consideration tonight, if possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve application 2016-15 with all the stipulations and representations that have been made on the application form.
We have a motion to approve
And I second it.
with stipulations as stated. We have a second, Mr. Cutrone.
Oh, you second it?
Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The application's approved. All right. I'd like to take up application 2016-12. Motion to take it off the table.
Take it off the table, I second it.
Approved. Aye. All right. We heard presentation on this twice, I think, now. Is there any discussion of this application?
Give me the other.
No, you do it for this one, to approve this one. You're going to approve, just make a motion, so I make a motion to approve 2016. This one, this guy's right here. This guy's right here, but approve this one. This guy's here. You want to do the same one, it's a constructive facility. Make a motion, you want to accept it? No? Go ahead, don't let
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve application 2016-12. And in that approval, I would like to stipulate all the information that was presented during the public hearing, all the concerns from the commissioners, all staff's input and any concerns that staff had in terms of her additional requirements for the approval and application. And I think that basically just my own input that for the use of the parcel, it is it's a good use in terms of any type of impact for such of a building that they're going to construct. I fully sympathize with the two property abutters on both sides, and think that the concerns of water retention and the flooding of the parcel have been somewhat met, and that the landscaping plan will enhance the area. I don't think you're ever going to solve all the problems that are there. It's just a natural occurrence. And a bond to be set by staff for 2 growing seasons. And that's basically it.
All right, we have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? All right, so
You guys want to discuss it?
to reiterate, the motion is to approve based on or with all the conditions that we spoke about this evening, with calculation of a bond to be made by staff, which will be held at least partially for 2 years.
2 growing seasons.
There's a provision to make a partial release if everything is acceptable. So we have a motion, we have a second.
Second?
Discussion? None.
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Application is approved with conditions. Moving on, new business.
No new business.
We have no new business.
No.
Staff report.
None.
We have no staff report.
I make a motion adjourn.
No, wait.
Commissioners Forum.
Commissioners Forum. Do we have any commissioners who wish to speak at a commissioners?
All right. If, could you gentlemen bring your information that was offered by the self-storage
That's appropriate.
application? This bound copy. The wetland identification and assessment report?
What page?
Okay, I will direct you to the project location map.
Okay.
Everybody have that?
Yep.
I don't think it's paginated, but
It's in the appendix, appendix.
Yeah, we have it.
Here, okay, this is what you guys got this?
Yeah, we got it.
all right. I think it's incumbent upon this commission. We're happy that, now, let me
Talking about
let me show you this one here.
We got it.
I'll stand up and show you. This is the aerial photo, all right? By our vote tonight, we are cleaning up this mess right here. All right? That's inside the yellow triangle. If you look just to the right of it, they're going to take care of it.
Oh, no, it's all the garbage there too, yes.
You will see another significant mess.
Next to the go-kart.
The go-karts.
I don't think it's the go-kart track. I think it's actually the property of the bedding barn.
It's next.
Whatever it is, have you walked back there?
I have.
Me too. I've been there 4 times this week, and who owns it?
We have to get that cleaned up.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, all those representations are going to be kind of moot.
Right. But you got to go to the next neighbor and have them clean it up. These guys
No,
can't.
it's not up to them.
No, I know that.
That's why I didn't want to bring it up
Right.
in the discussion of the vote of this, to cloud it.
It's going to take another, I'll have
But
to.
we have to send a notice of violation,
Correct.
And we have to
The
follow
blight,
that up.
the
with some
blight
sort of-
officer should go after that.
blight officer should be down there.
Absolutely.
It's also a major wetland violation.
Right.
So we got a
You
number
gotta
of things.
send a blight letter first, then a wetlands letter.
And another point too, where the town is in the process of putting together a new stormwater management plan for our MS4 permit. MS4 permits are issued by Connecticut DEEP, and it's for everything that enters the storm sewer system. And one of those things is proper housekeeping, maintenance of your catch basins, and one of the major things with this new iteration of the MS4 permit is disconnecting your impervious surface areas from local water courses. So if you look, if you're looking at this location map again, directly to the north of the property, you see we have this entire impervious area of Burlington Coat Factory. All that water is sheet flowing to the, to the east, to the west, into the same water course that's being affected by this current application. So one of the important things for this MS4 permit is to disconnect some of these impervious surfaces and turn it back into pervious area, turn it into grass, turn it into a park, turn it into anything other than that mess of concrete and asphalt that's there. So I think we have to think about, yes, this project is one small project on Ferry Creek, but we have to think about it holistically and how can we make this all better for our stormwater system.
Okay, so,
I don't know if this has to come up. Probably not even around. Because
It probably has to go to blight first.
have to.
Send a letter out legally.
I don't think it needs to be a motion. I'm aware
No,
of it,
just-
and
So,
I'll
but it-
move forward
so,
with
yeah, so-
issuing a violation by the next regular meeting.
if you could do
and
that,
you
and
will so
maybe,
inform the blight officer.
and I was going to say, maybe send a letter to the blight officer
Well, we don't need to.
telling him of our
We
intention
could
it's a
do it officially
violation.
through a letter, or
It's
we
what
could-
he can do.
We could try it through the conservation administrator first to see what happens.
Right.
I think it should be in concert. I think that
Yeah.
you'd probably get, if the two of you showed up on site.
Oh, definitely. And also zoning, because they're obviously within 50 feet of a wetland, so
Yeah.
they have
Right.
zoning
Well,
violations
no,
as well.
that property may not be
So
zoned as a junkyard.
They would
It
get
probably
hit up.
isn't.
Yeah.
They would get hit up by all three of us.
No, it's a zoning issue, but we also have jurisdiction
Oh, completely.
because of
I
the
think all
the
three of us.
proximity. But you're right, if you go through the blight officer, he has more impact in terms
Right.
of dealing with the town attorney's office. There could be, penalties imposed to the property owner. Actually, they could put in a hold on the property deed. I mean, there could be a lot of things done.
It's a problem.
So I think that's the route to go. I think, administratively, Tina could use
Get
that
involved
avenue
most,
first,
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Good point, Bill.
And most of the material back here is all metal, so
Yeah.
that's all recyclable. So
Whatever.
somebody's gonna pick up a few bucks there.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay,
I make a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Slade?
Second. Aye.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned at 20:39. That's 8:39 for your land.
I did 8:40.
Hey, Tina,
Yeah.
when you put the public notices, Lori,
I'm sorry, what did I put? I did.
What did you do?
Lori said, tell him to put your name in his Thomas. Or put
Sounds
Tommy.
much more official.
Some of my grandchildren call me Tommy.
Call you Tommy. That's really cute. Oh,
I'd like to know, one quick question. If the doctor was saying there's that much flooding back here, why isn't it flooding the tracks?
I think they're raised.
The track's elevated.
How high?
Oh, probably 10 feet.
Yeah, at least.
Probably 10 feet.
Because he was talking like
That.
30 feet.
Nice guy. I feel.
Just leave it here.
But you're not an engineer. Leave it to me.
All right.